So how are you measuring the success of each ORC person? Let's break it down from effort and break it down to person, if we can.
We have a 3-year average for our team. We have a 3-year running average on the amount of apprehensions we make, Gap Inc. recoveries. We recover a lot more merchandise for the industry than we do actually for Gap Inc. in a lot of cases, but we still work the cases. So the amount of arrests we make, the amount of apprehensions, Gap Inc. recoveries, and the amount of people we train, law enforcement. And in many cases, we're certified to go out and train law enforcement. We're post-certified in many states to do that.
Yeah, you have mentioned that before, where you actually go out to the localities and meet with the law enforcement folks and train them.
Absolutely.
On communication, what to look for, and so on.
Teaching them to fish for themselves. So when we go out and we do a great training session with Chesterfield, Missouri, and do a great operation with them, leave, and a week later they call you and say, hey, we went out and did the same thing you guys did, and look at the fruits we have of that. So
and Home Depot's doing that as well?
Yep.
Kroger?
Like Nelson said, we're constantly putting on seminars to either state ORC associations. You know, we've been to Washington, Oregon, Ohio, and it's almost all law enforcement. It's probably 70-30 law enforcement and retailers. And we take the time to put on those training seminars for law enforcement, specifically for law enforcement, so they can identify ORC. It's like everybody said, it's still in its infancy stage. And they have to be able to recognize what is ORC and what does that mean to their community. What does property crime mean to their community?
And Deb, how does Home Depot measure the effort of an individual ORC executive?
Well, there's really many components to that. So the easiest is from the metric point of view, right? So as far as how many open or active cases they're working on, because they do take a tremendous amount of time, so different than what you'd see locally in a store. So it's what do we have open for active cases? What do we have for closed cases? Number of arrests involved in the cases? What kind of charges were we able to get sanctioned on the people that were arrested so that we can ensure either it's strong enough to make a difference, meaning they won't be back, or strong enough to help us when it's on a plea bargain end of it to hopefully get restitution back. So. And oftentimes there's recoveries, you know, fortunate for us with many of the cases that we do. So, you know, what's the amount of product that we were able to recoup back? So there's really many different pieces to that. And part of it too, quite frankly, is, and this is a tough thing to measure, is protection of the brand. Right, so first and foremost is our consumers that are in, you know, shopping in the environment, in the Home Depot stores, any of our stores really. And it's how can we help mitigate those large groups that are coming in and creating havoc in the stores because they're boosting out product. And that has a superficial impact to our consumer base. So even though we may close some cases and they may not be big glamorous numbers, sometimes big numbers aren't good, but when you can recognize that you've cleaned up some environment in the store and made it a better place to shop, you know, there's something to that.
Absolutely.
And I think that's part of something that we add in. Difficult to measure and put a number to it, but I think you can see it, and that's important.
I measure or the performance of my people probably slightly differently, Gus, and I'll speak to that in a second. But the ROI model is very simple. The ROI model is a 12-month annualized sustained rate of loss. So similar to what Denny does at Kroger with taking the confession from the folks that they interview or the total case value, they prorate that. We prorate what they do on an annualized basis based on an effective interview. And then we make the assumption if we had not caught them, they would have continued to do this for the next 12 months. And let's face it, they've been doing it for the last 5 years. The reality is I can do a 12-month ROI summary or a 36-month. I do them both, okay? So we keep that very simple, and right now we have an ROI of about 12 to 1. So based on $12 recovery for every $1 spent in the effort, all right? Which is pretty good ROI. It's tough to throw recovery into that because I think if you've worked a lot of these cases, you don't always make those big significant recoveries, particularly when you're dealing with an individual who is not only the booster but also the fence. I mean, that's how they're making their living, all right? But some of the smaller ORC groups that we work, 4 or 5 individuals, they're addicts. they steal it and they sell it the same day, and that product's gone, just to fit an addiction. As far as measuring my people's performance, I do it in several different ways, but it's all about future development. So, you know, a wise person once told me, nothing complements a great case better than a great statement and a great report. So I evaluate them based on the development of the case. I can tell if they cut corners. That's one thing that they definitely know. They can't fool me. So I'll look at the outcome, and then I'll start to re-engineer what they did. And I'll see where they may have cut corners and rush that interview. But I got to tell you, I'm very proud of what my people do. I take that very seriously. They know that I do. So does my boss. And at the end of the day, the proof is in what they bring to the table when the case is complete. So it's really difficult. You know, you can invest as much time and energy in a case that yields an $80,000 confession as perhaps a case that yields a $1.2 million confession. So I can't really put that into the mix. I just have to know based on what they say and what that suspect tells us that we've extracted from them what they've done over the last 5 or 6 years. And I feel comfortable with my people.
So what's the average length of an average ORC case? What's the average size? I know it's a rather simplistic question, but I've got to ask because I'm curious.
Ours is about 9 months.
We average between a 2 and 4 day closure from the time we identify it to the
How
time
long
we
had it been going on?
Oh, how long had the total thefts been going on?
Right.
Oh, that ranges. You know, we may pull something out of thin air because of an incident management system report, and the telltale signs of professional activity is there, or ORC activity is there. When we get in front of them and interview them, they may have been doing it for 5 or 6 years.
So what would be the average amount? Just
4 years.
4 years?
Yeah.
For what amount?
Depends. If it's an e-commerce seller, someone who's stealing and selling online, we've ran with the average case of about $300,000 for years. That's what the confession is.
Denny?
Our investigations last 9 months. When they go, and honestly, we haven't had any go to trial yet. They all have pled guilty.
Good job, Denny.
Well, not me.
Well, good
Not
job,
me.
team. And Carl.
And Carl. But when we talk to them, because they admit their guilt, and we ask the boosters, who are 92% of our cases are narcotics users, they've been taking product to that fence for 2 to 3 years. So what's the loss for all retailers, not just Kroger? They're stealing from Kroger, they're stealing from CVS, Walgreens, Myers, everybody.
So your average, you would think, would be like 2 to 3 years with a 9-month investigation span.
9-month investigation, correct. And I would...
Just a ballpark.
9-month investigation, because I see all the reports from across the country.
Sure. Dollar amount?
Dollar amount, that's where it gets different. We would ask the boosters who are working for us, how long have they been taking product there, and what other stores do they hit? So we might have a fencing operation that the fence himself says, I've been doing it for 3 years. It might be a $3 million case. We don't recover that $3 million.
Right, understood.
But the amount of stolen product that went through that fencing operation is in the millions.
I want to continue that question, but I want to add another piece to it, and that is, what does the typical ORC group look like in your store? What is that group, if you could identify them as well? So we've got how long does it take to do a case? What's the average dollar amount? And what do they look like? I don't mean to be discriminatory, just identifiable.
Right. I think, you know, on average, if you look back over the year, our cases will average about 6 months. We have many that do run 9 months. We've had some that have run longer than that. As far as how long have they been impacting us, as far as the data will let us go, easy 2 years. You know, in many of the cases today, in today's environment, they're online based, so in e-commerce, so we have the ability to see with more clarity on how big it is and how long. So our average case, we're running on average right now about $75,000 per case. They've been obviously much bigger than that. And what they look like your everyday shoplifter as far as the booster group in the store. So, you know, we hear the term professional shoplifter, they look like a shoplifter, and it's not until they leave the building and what they then do with it is when they kind of turn into the professional shoplifter. And it's the fence, I think, that has changed quite a bit. You know, so our traditional fence, if you'd asked me this question 3 years ago, would have been, for us anyways, the pawn shops, the flea markets. Today's environment, it's still the pawn shop, but not through the storefront, not the brick and mortar. It's through e-commerce. So on the backside of that pawn shop, even the flea markets today are utilizing the platform of e-commerce to try to broaden their horizons. And then just really the transition from product to now store credits and gift cards. You know, so, you know, the shoplifter still looks like the shoplifter taking the product, but it has entered another phase. It's, you know, the booster group got a little bit bigger because you've got your group that's shoplifting, and then they transition to the group that's going to then return it to generate your store credits, and then that's what's then going to go off to the fence.
I'm in line with Deb of what the booster looks like in our store. They look like a shopper. And they'll even tell you that they come in and they want to look like a shopper. Where what we see is 92% of our boosters are narcotics users, and that's why they're stealing.
Which is what Captain Williams with ORC, LAPD, said. The #1 gateway crime is drugs.
No, there isn't any question about it. From the Kroger standpoint, that's what we see. I can tell you what drug is prevalent across the United States based on the region of where the boosting's going. I could tell you if it's meth or crack or cocaine or heroin or if it's pills. It's just that culture with that part of the country. But 92, 93% of all of our boosters are narcotics users. That's how they get their money, taking it to the fence, then they get the money for drugs. What we see in the vast majority of our cases is our fences are the brick and mortar. And they are pawn shops, but the vast majority are the local grocery stores, mom and pop grocery stores throughout America that are involved in almost every nationality that's in the UN.
And there seems to be one every week in the news. A C-store buying stolen merchandise, one every week.
And what we've done is we can chain these stores together because they're family owned. So we're seeing multiple stores owned by the same family, even in different parts of the country. And we've recently seen that fencing operations that law enforcement went in, executed search warrants in Nashville. That group had family members operating in another case that we had under investigation in another part of the country. So we see that narcotics plays a big part in the booster, but we see it with brick and mortar. Where we do see a lot of online is the organized groups that are involved in thefts from warehouses and distribution centers. The product that is taken from that, which is substantial, what we're seeing a lot of time is being sold online, accounts being opened, and the product being diverted back to the public.
Now, would that be qualified more as cargo theft?
No.
Okay.
That would be theft from our warehouse and distribution centers. It's not, they're not taking our truckloads, they're taking the pallets right out of the
No, are we as
warehouses.
an industry capturing that in the retail stores, or is the FBI? I mean, do we know where they're coding that specific crime? Do you know, Joe?
From the distribution center, it'd be a commercial burglary.
Okay.
If it's in transit, then they capture it as cargo theft.
Correct.
Right. And that's where we see the online use is the thefts from distribution centers, thefts from warehouses. By organized groups, we're seeing a lot of that online, but the vast majority of our cases are brick and mortar, the mom and pop stores. We did analysis based on financials that we found in some of these stores. They're doing multi-million-dollar fencing operations from 622 square foot stores.
Nelson, you're in malls primarily. I mean, what's the profile of your ORC criminal?
Yeah, Gus, I mean, really, when I think of ORC, we have Old Navy, which attracts more of, again, the volatile habitual offenders, often using, you could call it terroristic techniques, but, you know, pepper spray. The employees come in threatening the managers. It's not uncommon for them to tell a manager what kind of car he or she drives and gives them the license plate and can basically stay away from me. So Old Navy attracts a little bit more of the volatile shoplifters. When you get into our BR and our Banana Republic and our Gaps and even our outlets, you get the more professional teams. So you're talking multiple people, usually dressed, doesn't always have to be dressed very nice, but they're dressed for the occasion. If it's a nice hot day in Phoenix, they're going to be in shorts, baseball caps, and very good stealthy techniques, distraction techniques in the store. Very little, again, rarely any violence with those crews. And they come in and they can take, $10,000 off in a corner of a Banana Republic in a matter of probably 15, 20 minutes, and no one sees a thing. So it's a much different profile.
And Nelson, you've spent a lot of time training mall security personnel around the country and working with mall operators, being the frontline security folks in most of your locations. What are you telling them? What do you tell this outside company that doesn't have a financial stake or not direct financial stake? How are you communicating to them?
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, Joe, that Abercrombie & Fitch produces a bi-weekly report. It's an ORC specialty report, and it probably has 40 different retailers now on the report. Every 2 weeks, it's the top 25 malls in the country that have been targeted with major theft activity. And those security directors, in many cases, are kind of put on notice by their senior leadership. So what are you going to do about this? We do not want to be on this report again. For us, we created it through the ICSC, the International Council of Shopping Centers, along with peer retailers, Abercrombie and Limited Brands, about 4 years ago, roughly, created an actual training program for mall security throughout the country, the ones that were open to it. It's an actual DVD that they watch. That's, some of it's reenacted. A lot of it is actually live footage of professional boosters accompanied with an actual 2-hour session that we did throughout the country to train mall security on the behaviors. And it is all behaviors. When we're walking through a mall, we're looking for people that are very intense, people that are watching stores, people that are, when I say watching stores, you can't imagine how intense they can be when they're getting ready to hit a Banana Republic or Gap store and you've got somebody down on the first level, somebody on the second level, they're in constant communication. Often the booster bags aren't even in the area until they get ready to hit. I mean, they're just that structured. So for us, it's mainly look for things that are unordinary. You're looking for people that are not laughing, not holding hands. If they're in Vegas, they're not drinking a beer in the middle of the mall. It's business for them. Look for that.